Hello, fabulous physicists. So we're going to try to practice now identifying what forces are acting in different situations. So I'm going to go through a couple examples, and then you are going to try some on your own. So this first one, we've got a block hanging at rest from the ceiling by a piece of rope. So right off the bat, my go-to, and I'm glad they put this on top, is gravity, because that's always or almost always going to be a force that's present there. So we've got the force of gravity that is present. And the other piece I know is that this is hanging by a piece of rope. And so I have to decide, okay, is that spring or is that a tension force? Springs are specifically from springs, so this one's going to be tension. There is the force of tension pulling this object back up by the rope. There's no normal force because it's not sitting on a table, right? There's no table or anything pushing it up. There's no surface for it to be getting any friction from, and it's not moving, so there's no air resistance to result from that motion against the air around it. So yeah, this one's just got gravity and then tension of the rope pulling back up. The second one, we've got an object hanging by a spring from the ceiling. And it says it's at rest again, so we can guess there's probably going to be some balanced forces, just like this one, right? This one, these two forces balance each other out. So again, gravity, yeah, there's still gravity here. So I know there's gravity, so that one's present. And then again, I'm back to that question of, is it a spring force, is it a tension force? Because I know it's hanging, because it says specifically it's a spring. I know that is going to be a spring force pulling that object up, not a rope or something that would give it tension. So same like this one above, there's no surface, so there's no normal force, there's no friction. And because it's not moving through the air, there's no air resistance. So I'm going to have you guys try this one. Okay, so you should have identified a couple different things here. While the ball is in air, there's always going to be gravity still pulling down on it. So we still have the force of gravity. No springs, no ropes, no surface because it's in the air. And there's no surface for it to be getting friction from. So really the only other force would be air resistance. And depending on what direction it's going, I actually don't want to put an arrow yet for air resistance because it could be pulling it against it horizontally and maybe vertically as well. But we do know because it's moving in the air, there is air resistance acting on that ball. Let's go ahead and try this one. So this one, slightly different question. It does say that he's moving at terminal velocity. Essentially, what that means is that the guy is not accelerating. He's moving at a constant speed now, but he hasn't opened his parachute yet. So again, we know that there's the force of gravity pulling on this person downwards. No springs, no ropes. I would imagine once they open the parachute, there's going to be some tension on those ropes for sure. No surface, so there's no normal force, no friction, but certainly still air resistance. And I would go ahead and on this one certainly say that the air resistance is pushing upwards because he's falling downwards. Okay, let's try this one. All right, so we've got gravity, yes, always gravity downwards. This block is sitting on a table, so this is the first one where you have a surface. So there certainly should be a normal force. Oh, undo that. We got gravity going mostly straight down there. We've got a normal force. Geez, sorry, my arrows should be straight. Normal force pushing back upwards. And because there's no pushing happening, I'm going to go ahead and say there's not friction. If it were moving it probably would have some friction acting on it, but because it's at rest, there's nothing causing that friction to be needed yet. So this one, we've got a block being pushed across the table. So if you missed a little bit on that one before, see if you can get this one right. So this one, we've got gravity going downwards again. It's on a table, so we should have normal force. So those are both present, no springs, no tension. This one is being pushed, so I don't know what direction, but we'll say it's being pushed this way. And so that would be an applied force. That's not one of the answer choices, but you know that that one's there because it is being pushed, which means friction is pushing against it. So there is absolutely friction. And there potentially is a negligible amount of air resistance there as well. We don't typically tend to think about air resistance on moving objects just because it's not too exciting as compared to, a skydiver like this one above, where he certainly is feeling a high amount of air resistance as he falls. So let's try one more.